And welcome to another edition of Design Recharge. I'm Diane Gibbs, I'm your host, and today I am so excited. Somebody that inspires me a ton. I have Nathan Yoder on the program today, and if you don't know, he does a ton of hand-drawn type and is a great designer, and he's done stuff in chalk and all kinds of stuff. And I have lots of stuff to share with you visually later, but I just wanted to welcome Nathan. And just so everybody knows, Design Recharge is every week. We hopefully will have Nathan back in the future, and because we probably won't get through all our questions. But if you do have a question, right under Nathan, there's a submit question button, or over next to him is the chat. You can put questions in there. You can share links in there. This is a really way to connect and connect with other designers and connect with other artists. So, Nathan, welcome to the show. And I'm going to
Hello.
ask you if you
Yeah,
could
thanks for
just give
having
us a little bit of your background.
me. Yeah.
Just
Basically, I guess. Oh no, yeah, you're right. I guess if I was going to go back to the kind of where it all started, you know, I always drew, ever since I was little, kind of a thing. Started from coloring books, of course, into, drawing on paper, mainly like pencil kind of stuff. And I guess, just kind of as I got older, and actually, and probably what got me interested in design after I started drawing, at least, was um, it just kind of happened by accident, more or less, where it was actually the eighth grade, and one of my friends, he had a band, as much as a band can be in the eighth grade, and he, wanted me to draw him a T-shirt design for his band, and so I did, and he took it to his dad, which owned a screen printing shop. And so the next day, his dad showed up at PE and asked me if I wanted to draw for him, like do designs for this T-shirt shop. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, because at that point, I hadn't even thought about drawing to make money. I was just drawing because I love to draw. And so that was really cool. So basically, just started drawing more intentionally, through that guy's shop, and that was just kind of in my hometown. And um, basically, he was just taking my drawings, and he was telling me to draw, as dark as I could, working in pencil, so that whenever he scanned them in, they could be converted to a T-shirt or to a vector and stuff like that. And after a while, he was like, "Hey, like, have you ever thought about, like drawing on the computer or anything like that?" And basically, he ended up giving me Photoshop and Illustrator, and so that's how I ended up, uh, drawing, or that's at least how I got involved in like design. So finally, kind of coming from paper like onto the computer, and so basically, through the rest of middle school and into high school, I was playing with Photoshop and mainly just kind of like making wallpapers for myself and stuff is basically how I learned Photoshop. And um, let's see, through working with that T-shirt shop with designs, I got really interested in screen printing. And for a little while, and if anybody had been following me for long enough, I was kind of going under the name Flyboy, and it all started back then around the eighth grade. There was my buddy. He was making these shirts out of these like iron-on letters that you get at Walmart, and you just iron them on. I was like, oh man, I want to do T-shirts, or I want to make a T-shirt, or he was making a T-shirt for me, but I needed a nickname because he had a nickname, and that's what his T-shirt was going to be, is his nickname. And I was like, I don't know, I like airplanes, and so Flyboy just happened to be it. And from there, I just kind of used that as my brand, more or less, kind of to practice on. And um, so that's kind of that's so I had Photoshop, I had this fake brand that I could practice on, so I'd make these, again, just more or less wallpapers, but in the end it kind of turned into this thing. I started drawing, like looking at logos a lot, and I was really interested in that. And so I guess that kind of got me even deeper into design, and ultimately into typography, because obviously if you're going to be drawing a logo, you're going to be drawing type. And so whenever I finally decided to go to school, I was thinking, well, I've always loved to draw, but honestly, it didn't even cross my mind to be an illustrator just because I had seen, the illustrators that were really doing great work and were making heaps of money doing it. They just had such a specific style. And at that point, I was just drawing more or less kind of realism, taking a photo and drawing it, exactly how the photo looked, which, is all good. And I felt like I was getting good at it. But I looked at that and I was like, there's so many illustrators doing that that I couldn't really see myself going very far with that unless I just, I don't know. I just didn't really want to do that. So from there, I decided on graphic design as a career because I just seemed like that was something that, could probably be, after talking to some other people, that could maybe be more of a career. So went to college, went to OSUIT in Okmulgee here in Oklahoma for graphic design, and really enjoyed it. Finished school over there. Started working at the place that I interned at my last year at OSUIT, which is where I'm at now. And so, of course, started doing design. And the longer I was in design and the more comfortable I got with it, I found myself kind of, well, I had been so busy through school that I'd almost kind of forgotten about drawing. Like illustration would come up here and there for a project, but I just kind of, it wasn't really something I was spending a lot of time doing. I was focusing on design and getting better at design. Um, so, anyways, once I, finally life started kind of slowing back down, and I was working full time as a designer, at this agency, Hampton Creative. I guess, in the evenings I would come back home, and I just found myself more and more like sitting down and drawing. It was like once time was opening up, I was kind of
Hmm. Did he freeze for anybody
uh,
but me?
am I frozen right now?
There
I
you
think I
go.
saw like
Keep
a little
going. It
spiral on my
just
screen.
froze.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, keep going.
Anyways, so kind of pulling, all of my excitement from learning design, back into drawing, I feel like it ultimately was probably the best way I could have gotten to where I'm at now because, I think a lot of people, they, through school, you've got all these ideas of like what you want to be as a designer. And, I had the same thoughts. I was like, what's going to be the thing that sets me apart, And I think, if you go into a career that way, and I mean, lots of people have done it, so I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it can be a little harder to find your foothold because you go in with this really heavy style that only a few people want, but you're trying to make money. And, especially if you're new, not a lot of people are going to want to throw out the big bucks to somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience. So, um, I think going to school for design was almost my solution to my first worry in illustration of not making a lot of money and not making it a career, because I didn't have my style set. So, I went to school, I, had my full-time job, have my full-time job. And so now I can kind of come home in the evenings. And now, that I've got kind of this safety net, I can develop my style. And it's just been cool through Instagram, has been really like the catalyst to kind of push it forward. And more or less just kind of got to a point on Instagram where I kind of made a decision. I was like, do I want my Instagram to be about my life and, taking photos of, you know, just random stuff, or do I want to be intentional with it and do I want to push, my artwork through it? So basically that's, just started doing more and more of it. And I guess if you, I don't know if it's something that you have to pull up, Diane, but if you wanted to pull up maybe like one of the Welcome to the Week
Okay.
drawings,
Yeah. So how Spreecast
because
works
or
is um, Well, we can start with this one and I can grab another one. All you have to do is drag your mouse over, and then you'll be able to put this on top of the chat, or you can put it over my face so you can still see Nathan. And then you can, I'll take it off the air, but you'll be able to see everything that's coming up. So you can just drag it and move it around. So you guys got that? Nobody's saying anything in the chat. You got it, Nathan?
Everybody's nodding. Yeah, I got it.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, uh, you know, again, kind of going back to the whole thing where, or at least, okay, specifically how I got into like type, I guess you could say, is, or at least more interested in it. Um, when I was at work, every Monday we have these Monday meetings where we kind of, um, more or less kind of go over what we're going to be working on during the week, what's happened over the weekend, just kind of hanging out. And so during the meeting, while other people were talking about the projects that they had going on, I would be working on, I would be sketching, listening, okay, but sketching. And so, and drawing type, for whatever reason, it was just, I really liked doing it. But I'm such a practical person. I feel like I have to say something meaningful if I'm drawing type. I can't just like draw random words. So the one thing that's always there is the date, you know. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just draw out, the day and the month and the year. And so, and it being Monday, I was like, oh, well, it's the first day of the week. So, hey, welcome to the week of, February the 20th, 2011, 12, whatever. And so, I started with these little small ones, and I guess you can kind of go through these as we're talking about them, Diane. But, the more of these I did, I feel like I always have to one up myself. And so the next day, or the next week, that one would be a little more complicated, a little more detailed. I'd kind of like try to think of some theme to put behind it, even if it was, regardless if it was relevant to, the week or whatever. I mean, this one's a nautical one, and I'm in Oklahoma. I'm landlocked. You know what I mean? So,
How big are these?
I was just thinking of different. Yeah, let me see. I might actually. Well, I was gonna say I thought I may actually have that original one here by me, but I'd probably have to dig around. But basically, that one was probably I'm gonna say like a 3 or 4 by 4 inch uh, piece.
Hmm.
So basically, just in this sketchbook that I've got, and basically, kind of as I move forward, like what I use is just like a 8 by 10 moleskin
Hmm.
sketchbook, and that's pretty much everything that I do at this point is done in that. I think the one thing I found is the bigger I worked, I lost some of the detail and like the subtle kind of imperfections that I really liked whenever I was working small because especially with the kind of paper that is in just the Moleskine sketchbooks, it's kind of a thinner paper, but it's also really
Hmm.
absorbent. So, and I always work with Sharpies. So, I don't know. Again, I just kind of like all the little rough imperfections. And with a Sharpie in combination with the Moleskine paper, it just soaks up the ink and it kind of spreads and causes this really kind of rough edge. If you look close, you can't really see it from far away, but um, so again, like whenever you're working smaller, everything's more condensed and the rough edge is more noticeable whenever you scan it in. Um, so basically, oh, and Omar was asking if I work with pencil first. I've basically I've started to do more pencil work because one of the clients I'm working with specifically, there's more of a approval process. And so, they want to speak into the design a lot earlier. But for pretty much everything else that I post for myself and on Instagram, I try to just go straight from, or just work like only with a Sharpie. And I guess my reasoning there is I guess I just find myself when I am using a pencil, I'll just sit there and erase and draw and erase and draw, and I'll just never move forward. And I feel like a Sharpie is almost just kind of this crash course where it's like you just gotta keep going, you know what I mean? And if you, yeah, exactly. And I think it helped me a lot, just because I don't know. And again, with the style that comes out of that, it's almost kind of this accidental, like beautiful imperfection. You know what I mean? That I really like about it. You know, so there's certain things that honestly I probably would have done differently, but the way it turned out, I'm like, that's what I'm going with, and it just kind of that's how it ends up looking. You know, and I kind of like that in the end.
So, Krister, I guess, is how you say his name. Anyway, so asked, are they squeezed in? My question is, I am not a great speller, so I work in
Yeah.
pencil. So, do you, are they intentional, or is that, do you ever have to go back, or are you going to do it in Photoshop or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not a good speller either. I'm well, okay, little fact, which I think yeah, my mom's watching this, so not no I'm not downplaying her education, but like I was homeschooled for a while and I feel like half the time I was probably running around and not doing my work. So I feel like I really suffered on the whole you know, spelling test side of my education. So that's definitely one part. But yeah, like I mean, there are a lot of times where I'll misspell something or I'll start to, so I'll be spelling something and like I'll figure out like halfway through the word that I am spelling it wrong. And so I'll sit there and like either think of how I can work with that or sometimes, actually a lot of times, especially in like the earlier drawings I was doing, I would start to say something and I would either write the wrong word or misspell it and I would totally change what I was gonna say like to fit like what I had started saying, And I mean, it doesn't always work and yeah, like sometimes I've got to, scan it in and like change it in Photoshop, but I don't know. Like a little while back, I was watching Under the Great Northern Lights, I think was the name of the White Stripes documentary. And Jack White is the lead singer of the White Stripes, and he was talking about how whenever he's playing on stage, like he always puts his amp and his picks and like pretty much tries to get as far away from everything as he can, like just within like leaping distance. Like it's never very easy to get to things just because he likes the challenge. And I feel like that's kind of more or less how I look at things. Like I feel like if it's too easy, it's almost just kind of like, like why do it? Like I kind of I don't know. I kind of like to challenge myself, so yeah.
Definitely. Well, you also have, so I know obviously you started um, the with drawings, and you have some of those for me to show. So I'm gonna put those up. And if anybody's having issues with the images, all you have to do is pull your mouse off and then put them back on, and then you can move them all around your screen. That should work if anybody's having issues. And I'm sorry, I'm still getting over being sick. So, um, I mean, you were saying you were starting realistic, and I love how your drawings are simplistic in some ways, but then they're so detailed in others. But they're not quite this detailed, or um, like the lion, which I'll bring up in a second. But did you start with
Yeah.
like nature? Is that where your first draw was towards?
Yeah, and I grew up and really, I moved to Tulsa, which is, I mean, it's a city. It's like the second biggest city in Oklahoma, but it's still pretty small compared to, some other bigger cities. But I moved here like 2 or 3 years, about 2 years ago, and but other than that, the rest of my life was spent in Pryor, which is this really small town in Oklahoma. So, and we lived in the country out there, and so I was just always surrounded by it.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I just that was kind of what was around me, so that's what I drew, kind of a thing. So yeah, like this deer. I mean, I found the photo of the deer honestly like online, but then the background was from it's actually like my great grandma's farm or something like that. Like we went up there to see her, and like I took a photo of it, and yeah, just put the deer in there. But yeah, basically I was drawing like animals. I always just loved drawing animals just because I don't know, and kind of capturing their personality in it. Like this
Hmm.
was one that I did when I was at OSUIT. What's that?
Oh, I was going to say the detail. What were you, is it pencil or were you using pen here?
Yeah, pretty much all of that stuff is pencil. Like I never really, um, I don't think I sent you it, but there was some stuff that I did in college that was pen, and I posted a little while back on Instagram. It was just a guy's face.
Yeah, and it was
Mhm.
pointillism, I think.
Um, or yeah, like it kind of a mixture of things. Like where it got really small, I would use like stippling, and then where I was covering more area, I would just kind of use lines and whatever.
So wait.
Um, but yeah, so mainly, or go ahead.
Oh, no, Gavin wants
Oh,
to know if you want to
I'm right. I'm right-handed.
do. All right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right-handed.
I'm right-handed. I hope that
Yeah,
doesn't
so
come
basically just
up. Oh,
yeah,
so Gavin says it changes how he draws so that with a pencil or a pen so that there's no smearing. And I know with the moleskin, you're not able to draw on the back side then because it does bleed through, right?
yeah. And what I actually love about it is, I mean, yeah, I don't use both sides of the page, but because working with a Sharpie, it does bleed through a bit. I'm gonna see if I can find an example. And I don't know if you'd be able to see this, but like on the other page, it leaves a little bit of these dots. And so it sets up my next drawing pretty much. Like it kind of creates this natural distressed look on the next page so that whenever I'm working on that page, like I've already kind of done some work on my next drawing. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
don't know. I just like the Moleskine sketchbooks.
I do too. And I know people that work in the small ones, but I'm
Yeah.
more of a big kind of person too. I kind of feel a little limited sometimes by the super small ones. So you did one for this piece, which I was super excited about. And I'm going to pop it up because I just wanted you to talk about your process a little bit. Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
your type changes so much, which I think for me, I have some old books that I look at for type inspiration, but is there anything and we haven't even covered any questions, so I'm so sorry. But
It's all right.
I give my guests a list of questions and we haven't even started. But is there something you look at? How do you come up with these different typefaces and the feeling that you're coming with?
Yeah. Really just kind of all over the place. And it's kind of I try not to like camp out on any one area because like I've never wanted to, probably because, well, like I've never wanted to just be a copier of like any one person's work, or like say, this one person is like my greatest influence, and I just kind of get hung up on him, and I want to be influenced by everything I'm looking at, not like a replicator, and but I mean, definitely, and probably a lot of people would say it. And I've actually, honestly, kind of surprised I haven't gotten more flack about it, because like John Contino is like my hero, and like his type work is so good. Um, because I mean, sometimes like the work that I do, like I mean, again, like I'm not sitting there like looking at his work, but I've been influenced by it. And then another guy, like Drew Melton, I look at a lot of his work. He's a super good illustrator and typographer. Um, I mean, really, like those are like the only two names that like come to mind as far as like people, specific people that I look at like for type. And other than that, it's just kind of little nuggets from design blogs and, uh, yeah, just kind of old books and stuff. It's John Contino. I guess I can type too,
Yeah. So with Nathan, are you looking at any old type, like not necessarily designers or artists, but are you looking at old, typefaces or type specimen books, or are you just kind of gifted that you have a great imagination to come up with different styles of type even?
huh? I I don't know. It's almost like I think I look at so much that I hope that I look at enough to where it just kind of naturally, like I'll be drawing, even recently I've found myself doing this with certain characters that I draw. I've like noticed a change in how I'm doing them, and I have to like sit back and think like, oh, like when did I start doing that, or where did I see that, and why is it coming out now, kind of a thing. And I guess I don't know. I do look at some older stuff, but I feel like I should probably look at more. Like I feel like sometimes I kind of get caught up in. Well, okay, I'll like backtrack and say this. Like, I've always been one to to I guess I've just always been really honest with myself. Like if I work on something and I sit back and look at it, I've never been one to just sit back and say, oh, like this is my best piece. Like this one's amazing. I'm happy with stuff that I put out, but I'm like constantly trying to figure out how it could have been done better. And um, and really, honestly, I just reference, working at a design agency and working with type a lot on the computer. I try to look at like old, like just fonts, and ask myself why certain strokes and certain lines are thicker than others on type, and how serifs get used, and why serifs are being used in some places and not in others, and if that's the case, or how they kind of curl around and why they would curl around. Like more recently, I've been getting into more like calligraphy, and so that's really helped me understand type more. So like for instance, on the A on my name, the upstroke on like the left leg of the A is thinner than the right leg of the A,
Hmm.
because if you're drawing with a fountain pen, when you're going up, you're not opening the nibs of the pen, so it's going to be a really, I don't know if you call them nibs. It's not, widening out the pen. It's just going to be a thin stroke. So on the downstroke, it, you know, you push down harder when you're going down, and so it opens the pen up wider. So you're going to have that thicker stroke on downstrokes. So I mean, just little things like that. And then on the O, you would think it would be the left side that would be thin. But if you think about when you're drawing an O, you start at the top left and you work down, so that's going to be thick. And then coming back up around on the other side, it's going to be a thin. So just being really observant, because I mean, stuff like that, I think a lot of people will overlook if they're not paying attention to what they're doing when they're not working on type, or.
Right. Well, we take it for granted so much because type is just it's everywhere. We don't tend to notice it very much for sure. So talk a little bit about your process. So you put it in your moleskin. How did you do the color for the tan kind of color? And I just lost you. Hopefully you'll come back. Can anybody else
Okay,
see?
am I
Oh, there
back?
you go. Yes, you're back.
Okay. I see the wheel turning whenever I freeze, I guess. So or with that.
The did you hear the question about the your process? Like you have it on your moleskin, and then did you color it in on paper, and then just bring it in to the computer, or do Photoshop, or you talked about an earlier about an app that you use. Can you kind of give us some of that little insight into the process?
Yeah. So basically, if I'm doing stuff on Instagram just really fast, if I want to like multiply, um, uh, if I just want to do a quick edit, so I just want to put type over some photo, I use an app called Art Studio, and it's basically what it looks like if you're looking for it in the App Store. It's just like a little art, like a painter's palette. But anyways, it's basically like Photoshop for your phone. Like you can pretty much do anything you can do in Photoshop on that. So basically, if talking from the phone side of things first, like I'll take a photo, and I'll bring it into that app, and I'll have two layers. So I'll have the layer which is my illustration, and then the layer which is my photo, and then I'll invert the colors depending on what I want to do. If I want white type on a dark image, I'll invert the colors so now the background is dark and the type is white, and then I'll set that blend mode to screen. So if you know anything about Photoshop or have worked with layers, it's just the screen blend mode makes it to where all the black goes away and the light colors show up.
Mhm.
So I mean that's kind of how I do it there. I usually don't color stuff. I don't think I've ever tried coloring stuff on my phone. But if I'm working on the computer, so basically I'll take my original drawing, scan it into my computer, and then bring it into Photoshop, and kind of do the same thing. Like I'll boost the satur or the contrast on my illustration so that any kind of texture that was in the background of the drawing goes away. So it's just strictly black and white. And I guess you can kind of Google all of this stuff, but basically there's if you and I don't know how detailed I want to get here, but you can go to select and then select color range, and and whatever you put the eyedropper on, it'll select all of that color. So whenever I've made it just strictly black and white, when I select the white, it knocks out all of the white, and it just leaves me with uh, the black. And so from there, I've got this transparent version of my drawing. And then I'll just basically paint in with using a clipping mask, paint into that layer, which is my type, the color that I want, where I want it, kind of a thing. And I work with, when I'm on the computer, I work with a Wacom tablet so that I can still kind of have that hand. Um,
Yeah.
it's more comfortable.
So like this one, the background really has like a parchment kind of feel, and a lot of yours have different. Sometimes it feels like concrete or something like that. Are you taking photos and then putting them in the background? Are you having scanned paper, or what are you doing to get this kind of awesome background?
Yeah, actually, really, almost almost like strictly at this point. And it's kind of nice because you can't really tell unless you're really looking for it. I've been using one texture this whole time and just inverting it to black or white. And really what it is just I scanned in the back of my moleskin, and I've had this one for a little while, so just it's sliding around on tables and stuff. There's kind of just some good texture back here. And so I've just got like a really high res scan of the back of my moleskin, and then I just play with the contrast in Photoshop. And really, like even on some of my prints on my store, it's just the back of my moleskin is the texture that you're seeing. It's just you know, um,
That's
yeah,
pretty
just kind
cool.
of use the
So
same process. Yeah, where I just kind of knock out the fine details and I can color them if I want.
I would have never thought to
Yeah.
scan something black though, to be honest. So that's good to blow our minds a little bit. So, Gavin, I had a question about do you ever change your type in Illustrator, or do you stick to Photoshop scanning to keep everything hand drawn?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and I guess it depends on the final application because I mean, in some cases, you definitely need a vector file. So if I'm doing a logo for somebody, more often than not, I'll give them, Photoshop files or JPEGs or whatever. But then I'll also give them a vector so that they can, of course, scale it to whatever size they want. But to me, and you can do a pretty um, Because with Illustrator, there's something called Live Trace, and a lot of you probably know, but basically for those who don't, it's just you basically push a button and it converts all of your artwork to a vector, you know. And where you can get pretty detailed with that, if you zoom in, there's a lot of it kind of converts all your edges to these pointy little sharp things, and it just to me, I feel like it kind of loses the character and the type. And I just want my stuff to look the closer I can come to it looking like it just came from my hand, like the better, you know. And with Photoshop and just playing with the contrast and stuff, a lot of times you can get you can almost see like the strokes that were um, in the drawing as I was shading it in. I'm trying to think. Let me see if there was one in particular. Yeah, if you wanted to actually, Diane, pull up the Home of the Brave. Uh, it's like the one with the eagle on
The
it.
one with your hand
Um,
or the other one?
do the other one. You'll probably see it better. The black and gold. Yeah, so like you can see in the ribbon where there's all that texture in there. Like that's not any texture that I added. That was actually just from the Sharpie or on the paper. And whenever I scanned it in, I just played with the contrast to where you could pick up and you could see each little stroke that the Sharpie was making. And again, it goes back to that combination of the Sharpie and the Moleskin because um, you know, if I was using Sharpie on another kind of paper, there's a lot of times where you won't see those strokes. And if I was using a different kind of pen on a Moleskin, sometimes it's the same thing. Like it just blends better with other pens. So a lot of people are like, ah, man, Sharpies are terrible. And I'm like, yes, they're terrible. And that's why I love them. But I mean, yeah. And two, because it's such a soft tip, I can get good thick and thin lines. So I can press really lightly and get a light line and then push really hard and get it like a thicker line. I just kind of like the
What
variation.
size Sharpie are you using? Or do you have a range?
Um,
Like, are you using the
no,
small
it's just I
or
no, it's the one like right above that one. It's just like the standard
oh really?
Sharpie.
Oh, so
Uh,
I know the one
yeah,
that I
like
know. I don't have one in my desk like that, but yeah.
yeah, it's just the fine point. Or I guess this one says ultra fine point, but it's not the one that
It's
you
not
have there
yeah,
is a little
yeah.
finer.
It's the one in between these two. So this is like my
Right.
Sharpie pen, and then it's the smaller one. It has a square kind of
Yeah, yeah.
end on its top. Okay, well, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
it blows my mind you've done this with Sharpies, to be honest. And I know the moleskin paper is a smooth, it's still uncoated, but it's a smoother, than kind of a, I don't know. I mean, it's just so neat that you're doing this with pretty much the, tools that anybody has, but boy, you have just blown people's mind, I think, and I think that's why we have so many subscribers, by what you've done for sure. But you have this, so this was
Okay.
after you've done the coloring, and then this is
Mhm.
before the color.
Yeah. Yeah, and so basically, you know, and you can see there's some stars and like a burst kind of going on behind the eagle. So I mean, in that case, you know, I decided to get rid of that. And actually, what that was is the eagle. It's funny. I just kind of capitalized on this drawing because originally I had three buddies that were all going to go get the same tattoo. Like they were all friends of mine, and they wanted me to draw this tattoo that they were all three going to get, and it was just going to be like three bros, you know, like meaningful, you know, friendship tattoo. Which I don't. The three roses in this tattoo is probably the only meaningful thing. Well, I don't know. It's America, the eagle, whatever. So I drew this tattoo for them, but in the end they decided to go with something else. So I was like, oh man, but I really like this eagle. And so I was just thinking of stuff to do, you know, basically I was just like having coffee, you know, one night. And, you know, of course, it just being an eagle and again, like America, I was like, ah, I'll just write Home of the Brave. And, you know, so it just kind of turned into something. You know, it wasn't really like a planned illustration, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. And I mean, to me, the other thing that kind of blows my mind is that you're able to make this pretty small type in reverse because I always think it's hard to. I know it takes practice, and I know you've been at this for quite some time if you started in eighth grade. But I think that it does. It just, it fills in. Sometimes reverse type fills in more and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's definitely that's again, I guess it's just one of those little challenges, and that was one of the things. I guess it was one of those stages. I feel like I've had all these different stages where like I started drawing just this serif type, and I was drawing that for a while, and I was like, like all I'm drawing is serif type, and I like the way it's looking now, but I'm like, I just got to do something else. But I was like, but I don't want to stop drawing type. I like drawing type, so I started doing script type, and I was like, oh, okay, script is cool. And then I'm just always kind of exploring, and after a while, I kind of found that, um, I wanted to draw white type in a dark area, but I didn't want to scan it in and reverse out type. I wanted to just draw it there, and so, obviously, how you'd have to do that is just draw around the type and then fill in the area around the type. And so I started doing that, and yeah, it is kind of difficult because what the type that you're drawing, it's going to be quite a bit thinner than what you're seeing, so you have to kind of compensate for that because it will kind of bleed in. um, so yeah, I guess that was again just something that I just kind of learned to do, because in the beginning, like anytime I reversed out type in a drawing, it didn't look that great.
Right.
But just with anything else, just the more I did it, the more comfortable I got with making it look the way I wanted it to look.
So do you think that would be one of the things that you would tell other budding designers or illustrators or type aficionados? They're trying to do this. Are you just keep at it, keep trying, keep practicing, or explore? What are some tips you would give some budding type designers?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say, I mean, definitely keep your eye open, and not only for what you would expect to be the thing that would inspire you to draw type, like, um, oh, I don't know, like, I don't know. I feel like without being able to, I guess, totally point out a specific, I feel like I've just been inspired by so many other things outside of just typography that's inspired my typography. So, I mean, definitely look at a lot of people's work, but again, kind of like what I was saying, like don't camp out on any one person because you can get kind of closed off, and there are certain things that people are doing that they're known for, but is that what you want to be known for? You know what I mean? Like, how do you want to ultimately, let your inspiration influence you, you know what I mean? So that you're expressing yourself rather than you being an interpretation of somebody else. So explore everything and then start kind of narrowing it down to, what you want to do specifically. I guess uh, did I
No,
cut
I
out
heard
there?
you fine. It sometimes it gets, Spreecast is kind of touchy sometimes. So it's best if you're viewing, if you're going to be on screen, it's best to be on Firefox or Safari. I'm on Firefox. Nathan's on Safari. And then if it freezes out or you can't, somebody's blacked out, just refresh your screen. If it still doesn't work, quit and then come back. And once I've been using Firefox, I haven't had any issues. But I know Greg, so hopefully he'll get it together. Nikki, you're always here, and Meredith, what are y'all using as your browser? If you can just type it in, that'd be awesome. So Nathan, I know you work as a designer during the day, and then you're at doing this. Um, you know, one, obviously you're drawn to it. So what pulls you in? Because I know you don't get to do. I mean, you're working as a designer. You can't solve every single problem at your work with um, by hand. So, what draws
Hmm.
you to this? Is it working now, Greg? Hopefully. But what draws you to working with your hands and drawing type and stuff like that?
Um, I guess I don't know. Well, let's see. I guess probably again, if I kind of went back to the very core, like my mom, she was an artist, and she drew a lot. And then my dad, growing up and even now, like he does a lot of like more or less kind of carpentry work. So I feel like my mom's like the really creative person and like the artist, and then my dad, like he's also really creative, but like in this really analytical way where it's like he can figure out a problem, really well. And I feel like I've got kind of like this blend of both where it's like this creative side, but then this really analytical side that like can kind of sit back and figure out why something isn't right or what I need to change in order to make it work. But I guess just seeing, again, like my dad always working with his hands and like building stuff and like, he'd be, outside working on something and I'd be picking up little wood blocks that were cut off of whatever he was building, and I'd be like building my own little stuff, like or when I was younger, I'd build like ramps, to jump my bike, out of the scraps of wood that he had, laying around. So it's like I guess I was just always doing it just because it was kind of around me, kind of a thing. Um, and I guess as I've gotten older, I've wanted to do more with my hands besides just my first love of illustration. So I guess that's where I guess you could pull up that skateboard where I've kind of wanted to start working more with wood and specifically like I've really wanted to do some like hand painted signs, like get some old kind of reclaimed wood and just paint on the wood. Um, so I mean, I guess it's just something that's always kind of been there, um, just because it's kind of been in my family a bit, and so I just kind of naturally kind of headed in that
Well,
direction.
it's awesome. I mean, I'm glad you're doing it because it is super inspiring. I know that, you know, I'm sure people want to know how to get work. So they're drawn to this as well, and they're drawn to you and as a somebody that's inspiring. So you put your stuff out there. You're on Tumblr, and I'm gonna give the links in a minute. Tumblr. You have a store. I can't something. It has a number in it, and it starts with an S. Those are the things I remembered.
Oh yeah, Society 6.
Society Six. Um, and
Yeah,
you know, how would somebody else try to thank you? Awesome. Let me put it on the screen for you.
yeah.
How would somebody, if they were trying to get into something like this, or they just think that this is neat and they want to play with it a little bit, um, how what would you say? Like, start on Instagram, or is it Twitter? Because you're big on Twitter too. You have which one, if you don't have a lot of time, which one, if you had to choose one, which one would you do for marketing kind of purposes?
I think I mean, I don't tweet a whole lot. I feel like Twitter is basically just an avenue that I push my Instagram to. You know what I mean? I know there's people on Twitter, so I push my Instagram to Twitter. So I feel like Instagram is just kind of my go-to. But I guess as far as like if people were trying to get work, um, I know I did freelance for a while of just like design freelance, and it was more or less me doing every and any project, so somebody needed, some postcard, designed for, their baby shower or something like that. And
Yeah.
so it was this project that I was like, oh man, like I don't want to do this, but I was gonna do it, because it was money and all this stuff. But that was when I was like, okay, what is gonna set me apart? Because if I don't want to be, doing specifically kind of these little side projects. Um, so I guess my thing, I would say, like, find out what exactly, like, wait until you have like no time, or wait until you have tons of time, like heaps of time. You're just sitting around doing nothing. Like, what is it that you find yourself doing without even thinking about it? You know what I mean? Because that's how I found it. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of stopped letting people tell me like what I was, or stopped listening to what other people were saying that I should do, and like even what they were saying I was the best at, kind of a thing. Actually, whenever I went to OSUIT, I was basically enrolled. They had me enrolled in multimedia because I had won. It was a student competition before I went to OSUIT, and I had won best of show and like all these awards in multimedia because I'd been working in Flash and After Effects, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. And in the end, it was the best call. I just listened to what. I guess I could sound really selfish, but ultimately, it's where your career is going. Like listen to what you want to do. You know what I mean? And just the things that you're passionate about. You know what I mean? And let the things that are around you drive that. Like don't. For a while, I was thinking, oh, I'm from Oklahoma, and especially from Pryor, Oklahoma, this small town. I was like, how can I ever go anyplace? Because all the big names are, from New York and LA and all these big places, and I was almost a little bit like ashamed to like put myself out there because I was like nobody's gonna think I'm credible because what's out here. But
You sh-
I just found that the more I try, or what's
you
that?
showed them. Everybody saw that.
Well, I mean, well, I hope so. Well, not that that's about that, but like I guess I found like the more that I put myself into my work, the more of my personality that I put into my work, the more people responded to it. Like as opposed to, I read this book and it was such a good book, and I feel like it's kind of pointed towards business, but I learned a lot personally about myself. It was called Start with Why. Um, type it out here.
Awesome.
Uh, I'm okay. I think that's how you spell his last name. If you Google it, it'll come up. That's probably not how you spell his last name. But
He did a TED talk and I shared it with my class. So I'm
yeah.
pretty sure, yeah, it's an awesome TED talk too. But
Oh yeah. He's so good. But basically, the main thing I pulled from that is so many people, yeah, that's it. So many people are looking at the target, like looking at where they want to go, and um, they're trying to change who they are to get to that target. And really, what you need to do is you need to look behind you to see what's driving you and just focus on that, and you'll get to the target. You know what I mean? I feel like you just kind of get distracted by um, just kind of these other influences when really you've got what it takes, half the time to make it happen. You just kind of need to, um, I don't know, look at what that is, And I guess for me, it was just, again, the whole nature side of things. I was like really big into that. So it's like all of my type kind of has this organic kind of like you just pulled it out of the ground kind of look, And I don't know, it's all just stuff that I pulled from my background in order to make it what it is, rather than like trying to make stuff really clean and perfect because that's what everybody's doing.
right,
You know what I mean?
you went where what was true to you, and you just found that and you held in and you went with it, even though that wasn't necessarily what other people were pushing you to. So no matter what any designer, illustrator, or artist is into, they just need to kind of really sit and listen to what's true to them.
Yeah, yeah, and then definitely kind of like what you were saying, find that avenue that's going to work best for you. Like, I mean, Twitter, I'm so bad at getting on Twitter and posting, like, I hardly ever do. Like, Instagram just happened to be something that I could do really quick. So, whatever the venue is to put it out there, be consistent. Like I said, I made the decision that I was only going to start posting type. So, when somebody followed me, they were like, oh, he does type. So, I'm following him for type. So, if I started posting, these random photos of like all my nieces and, like where they're awesome and I love the heck out of them, like I'm not gonna like keep posting them because like, and it's all in how you look at it. If you want it to be about family stuff, like you do what you want. I'm not telling you what you do, but um, uh, I just made the decision. So people are following me for this reason, so I'm gonna post geared towards that. And um, so obviously, the more consistent I am, and the more I post, I try to post, without turning it into this big weird thing that takes over my life. I try to post at least like once or twice a day, just to kind of keep um, my work in people's minds, you know what I mean? Because like if you're looking for freelance work and stuff like that, I mean that's how it's going to happen. Like next time somebody needs some type work, even if they don't specifically, if they will never need my services, like maybe they are talking to a friend somewhere down the road and they're needing something, like they'll remember me, they're like, oh, there's this guy I follow on Instagram, like he could, you should check him out, so it's just finding your avenue that you're going to use to get your work out there, like being consistent with like how much you post and then also being consistent with what you're posting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we did not get through barely anything. I'm gonna pull up some images. We'll have to do a part two. Maybe we can do it in May or something like that. But I'm gonna pull up some images, and
Yeah.
this is one that you did in chalk. And there is a video. I will copy and paste the video in so that you guys can see it. But this is a sketch, and the sketch really, I mean, it's very similar to this, but you did change some things. And let me pull that one up and
Mhm.
just plop it in the. Let's see.
And I'll have to go pretty soon, but we can talk about this one
Yeah, we
real
have.
quick.
I will let you go in 4 minutes, and I'm actually gonna wrap it up. But this one, you guys can watch the Vimeo. I put it over here, and I'll put it on the under us. But it's amazing. How long did this piece take you?
The yeah, the actual like chalk drawing itself, like that one, I started work on it at about lunchtime, I think. And like it's funny if you watch the video, halfway through the video, I went and got a haircut, and so my hair got a little shorter. But you can't tell. I mean, it's all just pieced together. And then uh, I ended up finishing it like at around like 3 or something, 2 or 3 in the morning. So I just like did it all in one day. Like it's really hard for me to like walk away from something. I want to hit it while I'm inspired, kind of a thing. And I think total it took me like somewhere close to like 12 hours
Well,
or something like that. 12 or
it's
13.
amazing. So I'm gonna actually pull. Oops. Let's see. Uh, I tried to remove. There we go. All right, I'm going to pull on some of your links and ways for people to get in contact with you if they haven't or if they're not already following. But
Yeah.
let's see if I can do this. So this is Nathan's website, and I'm going to try to post it over here too, so it's in the chat as well. And then this is his Tumblr, and I'm going to do the same thing so that you guys can have it in the chat. And again, this is always available after that's you can always come back and watch it as many times as you want. Um, let's see, it didn't come. There we go. And we do this every week. I don't always do it with Nathan, but I hope to do it again with him. Very, very inspiring, and I'm super excited to have had you on for sure. And I know that with just marketing wise, with Instagram, you can share to Facebook and to Twitter, and that's what I've done. I don't know if that's what you do, if that's how you get your Twitter stuff out, but it sure does. It sure is nice that it's connected. And then
Yeah.
this is your email, and so just regular old info, and then it's gonna be yes, Hunter. I agree. Nathan is he is huge already. So we had some questions.
That's awesome.
When's the next time frame video or sketching piece gonna come out? That's something Hunter wanted to know. Um, would love to see more of those. So those are good to know that those are neat for you. Anyway,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to let y'all know Design Recharge is every week, and you can find me at diane@designrecharge.org. You can sign up for our email list, and you'll get an email, and you'll also just to tell you what we did last week, which will show you Nathan's, and then it'll show you what we're going to do this next upcoming week. And then I also give you a insight into the questions that I'm going to try to ask, but we had lots that we didn't get to today. But Nathan, you are awesome, and I can't wait to keep following you for the rest of your career and just keep going because you're doing awesome. And I'm glad you found what resonated with you. And you're getting lots of
Yeah, well, thank you.
fan comments from everybody.
Yeah,
So
well, thanks for having me on. I mean, I know a lot of people would have had questions, and I hadn't really had a chance to answer some of the stuff. So you had good questions, and it was good.
it was great. Thank you so much, Nathan, and have fun going back to work. And I so appreciate your time today, and hope you have a great week.
Thanks. You too. See you guys.
Bye, guys.